They were amazing. These were the best and the brightest students. They had great work experience. They had incredible grades. Nothing. There was nothing we could find. And then I said, well, tell me what you're really saying at interviews. Because we had practiced interview questions. And what I found was the students were talking much too soon about something additional that they were going to need. And so when this light bulb went off in talking to one of the students, I said, you know, this is common for anybody. And this actually isn't a unique situation to an international student. And I said, there are things that other people have that are special requests when they're being hired. So we need to think about this from a negotiation standpoint. When is the best time to talk about the topic? So we have to look at our timing, and we also have to look at how do we discuss it in a way that's palatable to the employer? So how do we talk about it, and what do we say? What do we say that doesn't scare the employer and makes them think, no, this is still a great employee. I can work with whatever this extra thing is that they bring to the table. So that's what I want to share with you today. So the first secret, the big secret to an employer entering into the H-1B lottery, the very first point is the most important. Don't panic. Much easier said than done, correct? Be the expert, prepare and practice. So what this means is we all panic at interviews. We all panic when we have to negotiate something with our employer. Even if our employer said, I'm so excited, you've done such a great job this year. I want to talk about moving you up and giving you new responsibilities. We're still breaking out in a sweat when we go to actually talk to them about that and put that into place. And we already have the job. We've just been told we've done a good job. It's hard not to panic, but the key to not panicking is being the expert and preparation and practice. So you all know, there's no question that are you going to have a conversation with an employer about needing sponsorship? The answer to that is yes. You know you're going to do that, right? So you can prepare for that. You can practice for that. The preparation is being the expert. So we're not going to panic. We're going to say, all right, I need to be an expert. Well, you're already going to school to become an expert in something, correct? You didn't know as much about the subject when you first started school. You're learning. You know there's gaps in your knowledge, but you also know there are all kinds of resources and people to go to say, hey, I hit another dead end, or I hit another hurdle. Now what do I do? What has worked in the past for people? Do you have alternate resources? What can I do to be effective? Exactly how you study, that's how we want to look at this process of sponsorship. So part of what you need to know is, how does H-1B visa lottery actually work? Would you know today if I said, yes, absolutely, I will sponsor you? Would you know who to call? Would you know what papers to fill out? Would you know how much it costs? Would you know what to do? No. Prepare. Preparing is the biggest part. So you can get ahead of this. You know that at some point you're going to need representation. You know you're going to need to work with Mercer as part of this too. So you can take care of those steps. Practice. When I tell you, write it down and practice it at home in front of the mirror, and you're going to feel so silly. You are going to feel so silly, and you're going to think, oh, I'm doing a horrible job. You're not. You're not. Some vulnerability is good in these discussions with people, but what we want to project to an employer is assurance. We want to project that you are the expert in all of this. So let me stop for a second and just talk about, how does the H-1B lottery work? So this is your first point of preparation. There was a really wonderful immigration attorney who came and spoke to a group of students, and he said he had the privilege one year, they invite different immigration attorneys to witness the process so that they can better inform their clients of how this works. It's not as sophisticated as we might have thought. So what he told us was a big armored car pulled up to, I want to say it was maybe a Hyatt hotel in Washington, D.C. And inside that armored car, they had printed every single H-1B application, every single one. Every single one had a number assigned to it. So there were no names visible on the front pages of that. And they went into this big ballroom, and on all these tables, they literally set out in numerical order every single one of these files on all these tables. And then somebody sitting at their computer generated the lottery numbers. And they pulled X number of numbers out of that lottery. And they literally took people, and I think they ran 2 numbers at a time, and that was it. So if they picked number 1,430, runner number 1 went and checked number 1,100 and looked, and was everything complete in the paperwork? And if it was, that person just won the lottery. But if they found that something was missing, if an I wasn't dotted, if a T wasn't crossed, then that was put into the not eligible pile, and they went to the next number on the list. That's what it actually looks like. I loved hearing that story because that gave me this visual image of what is this lottery that you enter into that seems like it just floats in the clouds, and what does it look like, correct? So that is what happens. Your odds do fluctuate. Some years you have a 50-50 chance. So even if you get the employer to go through this whole process with you, it's still not a guarantee. It's still not a guarantee. So know that. How much of that to share with the employer? Let the attorney share that part with the employee when we get to that part. And cost. The cost of it typically runs between $4,000 to $6,000. Now that can fluctuate depending on your special case, depending on the attorney fees, but in general, that's about what it costs. That number might look big when you're a student and you're looking for employment, but to an employer, that actually goes to, I have 2 lists here, a scary list and a not scary list. Things that scare employers, the words visa, because they don't hear anything positive about visa in the news, right? Most people don't deal with a visa issue. A visa is something fun they use when they go on a vacation somewhere. That's all they know. They don't know what you've gone through to get a student visa and to look at employment. The word sponsor. The word sponsor sounds like, am I supposed to provide you housing? Wait a minute, am I responsible? Do I have to know where you are at all times? What does that mean? That sounds heavy to them. The word attorney, it shouldn't, but it does. It scares people. Why it scares are the thoughts that these things bring up. Okay, you're asking me for something. Can I fire you? What if I sponsor you and all of a sudden you become an awful employee? What am I liable for? What am I on the hook for? The other thing they want to know, you're talking about a government process coming in. They already don't want everybody looking at them for taxes. Now you want to bring the government in and you're looking at my employment profile? And the other thing that they're worried about is it probably sounds really expensive. It sounds really, really expensive. So those are all things that are going to scare them. If you know what's going to scare somebody, if you know what questions somebody's going to have, you can counter that, right? You know those things will scare them. So you will be prepared with answers for those things. That's going to help you not panic. That's going to help you not panic. You can speak much more calmly about all of those things if you know it. What's not scary to an employer? A sum of $4,000 to $6,000 is most likely not going to break the employer's bank. When most employers hear that range of numbers, they sit back, they go, well, that's not that bad. I thought you were talking about like 20 or 30. I thought it was gonna be like buying a car, right? They want to know what that scope is. That's not that bad when they're looking at that amount of money. The other picture that we want to think about, something that's not scary, is the idea that they are retaining you in employment, that there will be loyalty there. You will have loyalty to that employer, especially during the process. So that's comforting to them. They know they're going to be able to count on you. Being a hero, they're a little bit of a hero, aren't they? They have a wonderful story they get to tell. I was able to help this employee. I was able to help this employee with this. What a fascinating process. This is dinner conversation from them out somewhere, right? This could help them with the client. The client may be from where you're from. The client may want to do business where you're from. You bring this amazing culture into that agency that could help in many, many ways. That's not lost. The other thing that's not scary is in the language I'm going to give you to talk to employers, Mercer University is involved. This isn't just you and the employee and an attorney. We're involved because we are in fact, in quotes, sponsoring your visa for OPT for that time period. If the government wants to know where you are, they're going to ask us. Hey, we see that so-and-so's on OPT with you. Where are they currently working? They're going to ask us that question first. We provide a level of comfort to an employer because they know who we are, right? So there's support and backup to this. You are not alone in this process. It's a group of people working together. So this is one way to think about this. What's going to scare an employee and an employer, and what is not going to scare an employer? All right, ready for the secret sauce? All right, this is a lot. I'm going to give you my speech, and you'll see I've broken it into parts. Here's my speech, and you can use your own words. You can have copies of this presentation, but you always want to begin by thanking someone, correct? You then want to tell them the reason, again, that you want to have the discussion. You want to provide confidence and be the expert in the discussion. That's important. The money, put the number out there. We're going to put the number in there. Give them time to process. You are not going to get an answer on the spot. That's okay. It's okay. And then you give thanks again, correct? So let me walk you through this. I'm going to pretend you're my employer, all right? So I'm going to make up where I work and what I do, all right? So I wanted to thank you for this incredible opportunity. I am learning so much at Google, and I really enjoy working with all of my coworkers. I hope that I've shown you my dedication, my enthusiasm, and my appreciation of the business. I wanted to keep you updated about my visa. So when you hired me, you knew that I had 1 year where Mercer was sponsoring me. Well, the next step is the H-1B visa process, and it processes each spring, one time a year. What happens in this is an immigration attorney works with Mercer University to complete the application. Mercer, the attorney, and I can answer any questions that you might have. Where you come in is an employer has to agree to support, or you've probably heard the word sponsor, the applicant. I can't do that myself. I have attorney recommendations. I can lead the process. For you, it'll mean some paperwork, some attorney fees, and I'm sure I know the fees are the important part to hear. So I'd like to propose that could we discuss that in lieu of a raise or a promotion for this next year, might you be willing to pay the attorney fees and sponsor me through this process? The fees can be anywhere between $4,000 and $6,000 depending on the attorney. So that's something, again, I can present you with different options and we could discuss that. Now, I don't expect your answer today. Please let me know what I can do to provide you and to help you consider my proposal, and I am happy to lead the next step. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for the incredible opportunity of being here, and I look forward to connecting again to see what questions you have. All right, so you see how I presented that, right? You can take your script in with you. It's fine. It's fine. You'd probably pause where they'd have questions, right? So if all of a sudden you're talking and they say, oh, visa, H1, oh yeah, wait a minute, are there going to be costs? What's going on? Are there costs? You will have rehearsed this so many times that you won't just start at the top and read it through the bottom. You'll say, yes, there is a cost, and I'm happy to cover that with you. I don't think it's as bad as it could be. So, and I have a proposal for you about that. So they may want to just hear the costs. I had one student, and we rehearsed. And I mean, when I tell you, she'd come on in, she was shaking the entire time we'd rehearse. shake and shake and shake and shake and shake. And when she got there in front of the employer, she said, I just had this wave kind of pass over me. And it was like, well, here I am. There's nothing more I can do. I just have to say it. And she started saying it. She barely got through the words, I'd like to talk to you about my visa. And they go, oh yeah, okay, we don't get it. We don't understand, but do you have any idea what that costs? And she said, yes, it should be about 4,000 to 6,000. I go, oh, that's not bad. Okay, so how do we figure this out? And she was so thrown because she was expecting resistance and, this is odd. I don't know. And so she said, I had to take a second. And she of course knew them well enough at that point that she said, I actually started to laugh. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm so nervous about talking to you about this because I thought you'd immediately say no. And they said, I'll spare you her name, but they said, you're an amazing employee. They said, is that all that it? Let's try this. Let's try to see how this can work. It became something the whole company rallied around. And again, this was a small firm. This was 10 people, 10 people worked there. So there are opportunities out there. There are opportunities out there. This is doable. Now, the mistake that students make, the mistake that we all make, this is a special request. You don't talk about this at your initial interview. If they say to you, well, what's the deal? You know, can you work in the US? Yes, Mercer sponsors me for the first 12 months after graduation. Don't use acronyms. Don't give more detail than is needed, right? You're not hiding anything. You just want to make sure that, again, you're providing people information when they're ready to hear it and absorb it. So where the students were not finding the full-time employment was two things. First, at that interview, right? They were putting all the cards on the table and they were assuming that the employer understood the process. The employers do not understand this process. One of my great examples on this was I was speaking to the director of national recruiting of one of the big 4 accounting firms. So these are global firms, huge numbers of employees, huge numbers of H-1B sponsorships every year with these companies. And this was the director of national collegiate recruiting for undergrad and graduate. And one of my international students had a question about sponsorship. And the student had received a job offer from this firm. So the student was already, they picked that student. So I called the national recruiter and I said, hey, just wanted to follow up about this student. There was a question that was asked and I asked the student if I could ask on their behalf because I'd love to hear the answer too. And it was dead silent on the phone. And I thought, oh my gosh, right? What did I do? I panicked. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm asking a question. Something's going to happen. They're going to retract the offer. None of that happened. The recruiter said, I'm really embarrassed to say this. We don't know anything about that process. And then it made sense to me. Their job is to get them in the door. That's not their job after that. They're not going to be there a year, 6 months, 90 days down the road when it's time to do this process. That recruiter said, there's one person in our organization that handles this. There's one person. One person in a global company is employed to understand this process. So if you are asking the company questions about the process, they probably don't know. Your manager doesn't need anything else added to the work that they have to do, right? That's why you get to be the expert in it. Now, does this mean in being the expert? It doesn't mean that you know the entire legal process. You need to go take a law school class on it. Not at all. It just means that you have to be the team leader. You are in charge of your team. You're in charge of the attorney. You're in charge of Mercer. You're in charge of the employer. You're in charge of everybody. Does this start to clarify the process a little bit? Make it understood? Okay, excellent, excellent, excellent. And you will find your own words with this process. Okay, now there's a lot you need to do to find employment. So this is a very abbreviated list, but where I have seen success for international students, as soon as you get to campus, try to find work on campus, even if it's 5 hours a week. Try to find something, because it's just going to get you used to American cultural norms, correct? Acronyms, words, ways people go to work. Everybody you work for will always be different. So it could be confusing too, but it's best just to try that. While you're working on campus, you need to start from day one applying to opportunities. Apply to internships. You need to start networking. Networking is how you get jobs in the United States. Nobody hands anyone a job, but people like to know that you were referred by someone. They want to know that somebody had a conversation with you, or you attempted to reach out to them on email. It just heightens your chances of being hired. Attend career events. You're here today. That's a huge step. That's a huge step. I know you're so busy with school, but the career happens simultaneously with school. It's not something that happens at the end when you're close to graduation. Part of the reason it doesn't happen at the end is because it takes time. So I should have made that even bigger, but it says for a business student, it will take 6 to 12 months to secure an internship from the date you begin seriously networking. Seriously networking, meaning talking to a lot of people, not about, oh my gosh, will you help me? I'm trying to find a job. Oh no. Networking is, hi, I see you work in fintech. I've heard this word about this industry. I'm not clear what it is. I'd love to have a conversation with you about what is it like working in the industry and what do you like about your job? That's all it is. If you ask somebody for a job, they don't want to help that, right? Now you sound like we go back to the kind of that sponsorship. If they help with your resume, oh, will you help and see if HR got my resume? I can't call HR here and ask if they got your resume. It doesn't work like that. And now I feel like, well, now I'm responsible for you. Now I'm going to get blamed if you don't get hired. I can't take that on. I've got all these other things in my life. What I can do is send a message to HR. You didn't ask me to, but I feel good about sending a message to HR that says, I spoke to the nicest student today. If they do apply, they have my recommendation. Feel free to use me as a reference. That often happens behind the scenes and you never even know it. So connecting with people. Tell me what you do. That's a fun conversation. You probably have done that in airports, right? You're sitting in an airport, somebody sits down, they strike up a conversation, and you're like, I had no idea that the little plastic dials inside equipment in a factory were made by a specific company. What interesting work that you do. Who knew, right? It's fascinating to see what people do. Your first internship. Secure an internship with an American employer. So when you are eligible for CPT, if you have courses where you can do an internship, if you have group projects, courses that have group projects where you'd work with an outside employer, that's what you want. You want to be able to add that to the resume. It just helps. It just helps employers feel better about offering you full-time work. Always be networking. Oh, you're always networking. Go to any event where there's going to be alums, right? Talk to as many as you can. Full-time employment. It's difficult to secure employment for anybody. It doesn't matter if you're an international student or a domestic student. There's a lot of work. It's not hard work. It's really not hard. It's just time consuming and it's on a timeline. So it's like exercise, right? It's not really hard to exercise. It's just not letting it drop off your day, right? Setting some reasonable goals. If you spent 20 minutes a week on something productive career related, you will meet your goals. Now, productive is not, well, I searched passively for jobs and applied to things passively. That's fine, but that's like signing up for class, never going, and then not understanding why you got a failing grade in the class. Applying for the job is just signing up for class. The going to class and the homework and the work you have to do is meeting with people. Meeting with people, gathering information about that industry, going to industry events, going to career events. That's how you start to really learn, and that's how you move that application forward. That's how you move it forward. Think next steps, but not too far ahead. This is the other big important piece that I hope that you walk away with today. So I'm a planner. I am a planner. Nothing has made me more happy than calendars being online, because I can literally plan them out for the next 10 years. It's there. I can put future dates on my calendar. I love that. I love that. So I understand when you are in a situation where you do feel as though you need to think ahead, and you need to think, all right, what are my odds of this employer sponsoring me? So what international students do is they start with finding out, you can Google the list. The list is right there of what companies submitted an application or won an H-1B visa last year. So students say, oh, look, I see these companies. I'm going to target these first, and I'm going to focus on these. Well, that's not a totally bad strategy. But who else is doing that? Every other international student across the United States of America, correct? So now you've just increased the volume of applicants. You are going for the biggest international pools that are out there. So you have an even more competitive set. No company will guarantee you that they will sponsor you. They will say it is something that we discuss. It's something we can discuss if they already are on that list. Students spill the beans too early. They go to the interview. Well, the reason I'm interested in your company is because I found you on the H-1B visa sponsorship list. Well, now it doesn't sound like you really want to work for them. It sounds like it's all about you. I'm here for me. This is about me. I need my things. This is about me. That's not an appealing message going out to an employer. An employer wants, I am so excited about what you do. I would love the opportunity to contribute to it. Here's what the 3 skills that I bring that make me really unique. I can't wait to dive into this project. I have questions about this business line. I am so excited to be a practitioner in this field. That's what an employer wants from you. That's what they want to hear. So you can start with that H-1 visa list. But what happens is students say to me, well, I don't want to go with, I got an offer at this company, but I don't want to go there because I didn't see them on the sponsorship list. Another story of one of my students. So my student, first of all, he was scared to death to network. For 6 months, would not call anybody. I even sent emails to alums introducing him, saying, this is my student. He has questions about finance. I said that you had similar questions, and I'm sure you'd be happy to share. I'll look forward to the 2 of you having a nice conversation. Student wouldn't follow up. So he came in one day, and I said, I understand it. I said, no one loves calling people they've never spoken to before. It's really hard to advocate for yourself. You could do this for the person standing next to you in a heartbeat, but to do it for yourself, it's hard. So I said, okay. I said, can I see your phone? And he said, sure. And I said, okay, can you put it to where I can dial? And I dialed his phone, the phone number of the alumni, and the alumni happened to answer. And I looked at the student and I said, go ahead, go. And he's like, is this? And he stumbled a little bit. And the person said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you called. Yes, great. So I hear you have some questions about finance. What questions do you have? And my student is just frozen. He's just frozen. So I just scribbled on a piece of paper and said, tell me about what you like working at, and put the company name on it. And he asked the first question. Well, the alum started talking. Of course, they were speaking the same language, right? This was now a subject that they both enjoyed. He had questions. It rolled so well. I got up, I left, I went and made a cup of coffee. I came back. It was a 17-minute conversation. That was it. That's all it was. That alum referred him to another alum who had a job at a bank, or an internship at a bank. That bank, in major headlines, all across all of its job applications, said, we do not sponsor international students. So the student had stayed 90 miles away from that company. Well, now our alum referred him into an internship in the exact function that he wanted for a job at a bank that has a global reputation. That's pretty good, right? But where was his hesitancy? What did he not want to, why was he hesitating? Because they said, hey, we're not in this for the long game with you. We're not sponsoring you. Student took the internship.
I said, go and be the best intern in that company. Be the absolute best intern. So he went. The group loved him. The alums loved him. He then came back and we practiced. We practiced kind of a version of what to say about sponsorship. And the version was about going back to this alumni and the other alum. He asked if he could talk to both of them. They took him to lunch and he said, I'd love to ask for your help. You know, this particular firm where I'm interning, they don't have an ability to sponsor. What can you help me network? And they literally sat there. They're texting people, they're emailing people, they're calling people. He secured full-time employment at a very, very good firm. It was outside of banking. Here he had majored in finance, right? This is what he came to school for. This is what he wanted to do, but the opportunity came up in a different field. Did he take it or did he not take it? He took it because he realized this is the right next step. He had to be flexible. He had to be flexible. He has the sponsorship now. Now he's working in finance again. Now he's working in finance. He's working in finance and he's connected to the industries that sponsored him during his H-1B sponsorship. So he gained firsthand industry expertise. So it wasn't this straight path that he saw for himself on his 10-year calendar that I have. It took a diversion, but it got him to where he wanted to be. So I understand. I don't like it when somebody says to me, you know, you're thinking too far ahead, just deal with what's right in front of you. That's hard, isn't it? That's really hard. And we all in career services, we can empathize with you. We really can. We've all been in that position. So don't overlook the opportunity that's right there. Don't overlook the small employers. This is about who's going to really like you. Sometimes small employers are much more nimble. If you tell a small employer, I'm looking for this 4,000 to 6,000, maybe you have to work for them for 2 years. Maybe it's 2 years of no raise. So what? So what? After that, you can just keep going for salary if salary is what your goal is, right? You will, once you have what you need to be secure, then you can start looking about even more robustly. So this is what has worked for my students in the past. This is what I try to bring to the students here at Mercer too. So with that, you see I have work with career services. Oh, my last slide is gone. So my last slide said, don't panic and know that you are not alone. We in career services are here to help you. So your next step is to make an appointment on Handshake with your career coach and talk through, what does this look like for you? What does this whole plan look like for you? So with that, questions. What questions can I answer? Mm-hmm. Great question. So the question is, what is the first step to network more? What I would say is, don't overlook who you're sitting next to in your classes. So you probably at this point are going to class with people and half of them you know their names, the other half you just know by sight. Make sure you do know everybody. So get to know the people who are sitting right in class with you. Connect with them on LinkedIn. You're going to see in their LinkedIn profiles that they're connected to other people too. Alumni events, any event on campus where somebody's coming to speak, any networking event. I know if I saw that, I don't want to go either. I know, I get it, but go. Make it a goal at that event that you're going to talk to 3 people that you've never met before. Start there. Start with, I'm going to talk to 3 people. And you're going to open up with, you know, I'd say, hi, I'm Ann. And you are? I'd say, oh, that's wonderful. And what do you do? And what do you do? Are you a student here at Mercer? What are you studying? Pretend you're a talk show host. You're going to ask big questions, big general questions, and let the person answer them any way they want to, right? That's what it's about. It's not about them going, oh, I work for so-and-so. And you say, oh, I'd love to have a job there. Hey, I'm hiring for a job. We're done. It's completed. I have a job. That's not going to happen. Nothing's really going to happen at that networking event, except you're going to hear a little bit of information about 3 people. That's it. Hopefully they ask you about you, but if they don't, that's even okay, right? That's all right. 3 people and you can leave. That's how you start, right? Start small, start small. So that's a wonderful question. Does that start to get you rolling? And then career service can teach you how on LinkedIn to reach out to people. And we can connect you to people initially. We can do an introduction. Once you, like I had the example of my student where we got the phone on the table and he started talking to one person. Once he talked to that one alumni, he did 10 calls after that. He did 10 additional networking calls after that, because once the pattern started rolling, he got to the point after call number 3, he said, they're all saying the same thing. Do I have to keep doing this? I said, it's not about what they're saying. It's about the fact that you're connecting. So yes, you're shaking hands, right? You're meeting people, you're shaking hands. You're getting your name out there. Other questions? The right time to start applying for OPT. So on the Atlanta campus, I would say talk to Brenda. So talk to the International Student Services Office about that time period, and she'll give you all the exact dates for your graduation. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to apply for the OPT. The question on that is, how related does my OPT experience need to be based on the degree that I've earned? So your OPT is connected to the most recent degree that you've earned. This is where I would recommend 2 things: talking early with International Student Services, talking with your career coach, but also it's not, if you know you're going on OPT, it's not too early to find an attorney to start working with. Because where that's really, the question's really going to come up, you don't have to have a secured internship or employment to apply for OPT. Where you're going to be questioned is later on down the road when you're applying for H-1B visa. That's when they're going to be looking at, did this match? Is this where this is? They could also, they'll check it when you give the name of the employer of where you are employed, and is this, what are you doing from them? Is what you're doing for them in line with the degree that you studied? So you want to have, again, kind of that community looking at, why do you feel it is connected? Can you justify it? I've heard attorneys say, and I am not an attorney, so I'm not giving you any legal advice here. I'm only sharing past experience of conversations that I have been adjacent to, not directly there. But I have heard attorneys say that if you can have the letter from the employer that in your offer letter states, I am hiring Ann Kelly because of her degree in organizational management for her role in career services. We believe that her organizational management degree will be a good fit for her role, and asking them to insert specific language so that that is when if your number got chosen in the lottery and they're checking your file to see if all the I's are dotted or T's are crossed, and up comes Ann being employed at Dow Chemicals. Well, what does a chemical plant have to do with my degree? Oh, I see. She's working within a division within Dow Chemical, and the employer says the degree is directly related.
So it's not so much for school purpose, it's more for the later H-1B.
It's government. It's both.
Okay.
There's no school process. The school is the school is like your attorney in a sense, in just that, only that, not that they give legal advice, but that the government allows us to work with you and on behalf of you be able to take everything that you've done and filed and know, okay, you've applied for this. So they look to us for some partnership with that. And they hope that we are having those conversations with you. And Brenda does have those conversations. This is where you're getting into levels of detail, that there's myth that's out there and there's fact. So this is where I encourage you to make sure that you are speaking to the right entities. So this is where International Student Services will have the latest information, because as you know, things change all the time, correct? And also starting to be engaged with an immigration attorney. They have typically, many firms have lots of good resources, and the direct government website pages are what to look at too. I've watched many students, based on the advice of other students in their journey in the process, not do something that the government deemed correct. So you have to remember that it still is all about you too, and everybody's circumstance is different. So those are good questions, but that level of granular is a different job responsibility than what I hold. What I can help you with and what career service can help you with is, how do you find yourself? How do you make your way through the networking and through the study to where you're in a position of, am I going to be able to get this job offer? How do I get this job offer? So that's where we can help you in this part of your process. H-1B is a totally different visa process. And again, something you definitely need to talk to International Student Services about. OPT is for after you graduate. So your student visa ends when you graduate. So talk to International Student Services about that. Employment is different than study. And that's why you have CPT, curricular practical training, for while you're a student. And that's the easiest way to think about it. There's nuances, but CPT, curricular practical training, is while you're a student, and OPT is for once you graduate. When the school has you registered as, yep, you've completed graduation, now you move over to OPT. I know. That, I think, was the most, that's the piece that I think is the biggest surprise to most people, that even if you get the employer to sponsor you, it's still not a guarantee. I've had students who, if they have worked, some employers have said, you know what, then go to your home country, because that's what you have to do, and we can have you work virtually from there. Larger companies were like, all right, here's your pick. I had one student who was working for a company, and they said, okay, we have offices in Canada or Mexico. Where do you want to go? And so, on occasion that happens. Sometimes the employer says, oh, this is so unfortunate, this didn't work out this round. Let us know how your future plans go, and we'll go from there. Now, I know that sounds like you have it worse than other people. I have just as many domestic students that after a year of employment, the employer says, thank you so much for your service. Your services are no longer needed. Most states in the United States are what are called at-will employment states, meaning at any point, your employer can walk up to you and say, thank you so much for your work. We're going to have you take your things. Your services are no longer needed. And you're flabbergasted, right? You can do the same. You can walk up to your employer and say, I just wanted to let you know my services are no longer going to be available. My last day will be such and such day. That's an at-will employment state. So many people are in that similar situation. Just because you're hired doesn't mean you're going to retain that job for the time that you want to retain it. It's a give and take in these relationships with employers. If that gives you any little kernel of some sort of slight even playing field with everybody else. One more question? So typically, you do not need to put it on your resume. You do not need to put that on your resume. Typically, the job application has boxes to check. So there are two different questions. They're not standardized across all job applications. So I had students once that sent out a Facebook post to all their friends that said, hey, the answer to question 1 on an application is yes. The question number 2 is no. And the first question they usually ask is, are you currently eligible for employment in the US? Your current state today. Right now, you can check yes on that because you are eligible right now. But then they ask about, often the second question is something about the future. So sometimes the question is, in the future, will you need sponsorship to be eligible to work in the US? Well, then you'd have to check yes. But sometimes the question is, are you able to work in the US in the future? without sponsorship, then the question is no. So don't get in your head when you're doing job applications. Specifically, my current reality is a yes or no, or my future reality is a yes or no. Read the question. Read the question. I had a couple students, they were reading so many of them, they would literally call, they're like, I just have to read it to you. They would read it to me and be like, yes, yes. They're both yeses this time. They're like, thank you so much. So they usually ask those questions and weed it out behind the scenes. And that's why knowing someone at the company, connecting with an alum at the company, could help you get past that piece of criteria. It would be no different than if a company says, we don't want to see resumes unless you have a 3.5 GPA. Well, if you've networked with somebody in the company, you can call them and say, hey, thank you so much for speaking with me last fall. I just would like your advice. I've applied for a job opportunity, but it says only 3.5 GPAs. I have a 3.2. Just was wondering if you had any experience at your company, if you think it might still be worth me applying. Now, what you're really hoping is that they then go, oh, forward me your resume. And they send it to HR and say, you should let this person through. Sometimes people do. They really do. You would. If somebody called each one of you, you would absolutely do that. You'd say, well, let me go find out. Let me see what I can find out for you. And usually just by inquiring to HR, this is a really good candidate. If you say that, if you work for a company and you say, I really think this is a candidate worth looking for, then they can waive that. They can do whatever they want to do. They can do whatever they want to do. Yes, there are rules and things in that, but there's ways to justify things like that. So all is not always lost, even if the company says they do or do not sponsor. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you today. I really appreciate your time. Please know that we are here in Career Services to help you. So book appointments with us through Handshake. We would love to work with you. Make sure that you're good friends with the International Student Office. It is confusing. You think you have an answer, you're going to get confused again. Keep asking questions. Keep asking questions. And I look forward to hearing where all of you have landed, what you've decided to do. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Ann Kelly on LinkedIn. My name was on the Handshake part. If you can't find me, look me up in Handshake. You'll see me there. And I really appreciate your time today. Thanks, everyone.